Hi, everyone. I think we're about ready to get started. These lights aren't as bad as the lights when we were in the other room. So welcome. My name is Julianne Lanigan. I'm the Global Head of Enterprise Data Management at Western Digital. And I have the honor of introducing Barbara Turner here today. I met Barbara about 4 years ago when we started the integration of Western Digital, HDST, and SanDisk, which is now Western Digital. And a core key objective of us through the integration was to be able to build out a best-in-class enterprise data management capability that would unify the three companies into one organization. So as I had the privilege to look across all three companies, and hands down by far, Barbara was leading the best data governance capability across the three companies. So at the time, her team was very much focused at Western Digital on engineering and manufacturing data. But as we came together, I said, hey, Barbara, you got to scale this thing to the whole company, all functions, all types of data. And she was so excited to do that and lead her team. So as you will hear, Barbara's passion for data governance is infectious. And I just ask you to enjoy her story and also learn how Trace3 really helped her on that journey. Barbara.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to stay close to the podium. If you've just come in, didn't see me walking around with a cane the last couple of days, I'm recovering from knee surgery. So my party days are over. So let's go ahead and get started. How many of you came in a carpool together, maybe drove across the state? None. Okay, how about a road trip? How many of you taken road trips with your friends? Lots of you. How many of you are lucky enough to still have your friends talk to you? They still speak to you? Yeah, I love road trips. I really do, but sometimes they can end badly, right? Sometimes they can end badly. Well, I'm actually planning a road trip to Portland, Maine for lobster season. We've got a couple people already signed up to join me on this journey, and we're looking for a couple more. So if you're interested, hit me up after the presentation. We'll grab your luggage and your sunglasses. We've already got munchies and drinks already loaded up. Little Volkswagen bus out there, and we're going to hit the road, okay? So just let me know. We're gonna make it a lot of fun. Oh, wait, before we go, we should talk about some of the details. Everybody gets to pick where you want to stop along the way. So if you're interested in seeing some landmarks or scenic overlooks or whatever, we'll stop. Everybody gets to choose where you want to stop. It's a long trip, 2,800 miles from here to Portland, Maine, 10 states, unless somebody really creates a big detour, like the Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta, and then we've got to go south. So that's a possibility, a real possibility, but that's okay. It's going to be fun. We're going to make it fun. Let's see, one of the other concerns we have is somebody wants to get off at the border of Utah. So we're going to drop off this guy, and we're going to pick up somebody else. But there's a catch. At every state crossing, we're going to pick somebody up, drop somebody off. And remember, the new guy also gets to pick where he wants to go. So our change in direction is going to happen at every border. You know that, right? So I've got two devices I've got to operate here, so please bear with me. So, okay, so I think, though, you're kind of getting an idea how this road trip is going to go. And there's so many of you that have taken them before. You've been down this path, so you know. So you can see from the pictures. You're going to have some fun. It'll be fun. But we're going to be all over the place, right? Because everybody has a say. There's no real leadership involved in this. Everybody has a say. We're going to be all over the place. And if you had this on a map, it would probably look like this on its way up to Portland, Maine, and it can be kind of hectic. So expect that we'll have some stops and starts, and we'll probably even backtrack when we head down those dirt roads that we thought were really a road on the map. Oh yeah, I didn't bring any maps. Did anybody bring a map? Thomas Guide? Ooh, AAA, that's a really good idea. I have AAA, so we'll stop and we'll get some guidebooks from AAA. So that'll be great. So we're good in that area. So expect there to be some arguments, maybe frequent arguments, depending on who all we have with us. But now that we know that we're going to be mapping it as we go, expect there to be frequent arguments. Maybe people will even get frustrated and bail out. That's the guy you see walking down the road with this suitcase. We're going to have some people quit. We know this is going to happen because we've done this before, right? So expect that to happen. My first 5 years in data governance were exactly like this. This is the story I tell people of what the early years in data governance were like. It's like taking this cross-country road trip, and the rules were changing all the time. When I started data governance, we didn't have any guidebooks. The Data Governance and Information Quality Conference didn't even exist at that time. We had no idea what we were doing. We couldn't just run into AAA and get guidebooks. It was a very difficult time. We also were going through a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And so we had new leaders coming in all the time with their own agenda. They wanted to change direction. And on average, in the first 5 years, we didn't have the same leader for more than 8 months. So that map I described to you was a lot like what we experienced during that time. Everybody has their own ideas. And you know this, even if you're not doing data governance, if you've lived through one merger or acquisition, any type of business mandates that require you change direction, you've experienced this. So that was exactly what it was like. So now I've been doing this for 15 years, data governance, and I'm going to share some things with you that I've learned along the way. So what this picture represents is the reality of having a teenager in the house. Yeah, I have a teenager. He just turned 19 last week, and he's brilliant. A couple weeks ago, I asked him to start the dishwasher for me. Well, I walked into the kitchen a little bit later, and there were soap suds everywhere, all over my maple cabinets, and I lost it. That's when I'm no longer reserved, and I screamed, "Josh, what did you do?" And he came running into the room, and he goes, "Geez, Mom, I just started the dishwasher like you asked." Let me tell you, this is not the time to discover your shop vac is not working. There were suds, seriously. The whole kitchen had suds this deep by the time I walked in. So as we're mopping it up with bath towels, I got to thinking, my gosh, what did he use? I said, "Dude, what soap did you use?" And he said, "I used the blue stuff, Dawn." And I'm like, "No, dude, you don't put dish soap in the dishwasher." And the look on his face was priceless. It was like, what? What? Like, what do you say? Dish soap in the dishwasher? It makes perfect sense, right? And I looked at him and I said, no, you used the dishwasher cubes, the Cascade dishwasher cubes. And he looked at me and he goes, "Well, why didn't you just tell me that?" Well, my husband came in the middle of all that chaos on his way home from work. He'd just come in, walks into the middle of this chaos, and he hears the conversation. He goes, "Dude, how could you not know this?" Right? Like I said, this kid is brilliant. He really is brilliant. So did I make assumptions about what he knows? Yeah. Did my husband make assumptions about what he should know? Yes. Why? Because he's brilliant, right? He's brilliant. It makes me wonder, and I challenge each of you to think about this, do we make assumptions about the brightest people in the workplace? About what they know? Or what we think they should know? So, as Junan mentioned, about 5 years ago, well, she didn't go back this far, but about 5 years ago, two of our business managers got together to talk about some ongoing problems we were having with data quality. These were problems that they thought they had fixed repeatedly. It was the proverbial whack-a-mole situation. Right? You get that picture in your head? The same problems just kept coming up over and over again. So they ended up hiring some experts to come in and do an assessment and make a recommendation. Where do we go from here? What do we do? We've been trying so hard. And they found a couple things. So they found that the common problems that we had across the organization was we had poor data quality. But we knew that that's why they came in. Poor data quality, no change control, nowhere to record and manage issues pertaining to data quality. Okay, we had a help desk, but you didn't call the help desk for data quality problems. You called your IT guy that you knew, and that's how you got them addressed. The other finding that they found that was a common theme that ran throughout all these problems was really alarming, and that was a lack of leadership expectations rather than non-compliance. It wasn't that the rules had been out there or the expectations had been set and people were just choosing to ignore them. You know, I believe all people want to do good. Most people do. But it was a lack of leadership expectations. Let me ask you, when you think of setting leadership expectations, what do you think of? Most of the time, we think of setting performance goals and doing performance reviews. That's where you set expectations, right? What about setting goals for your data? It's a different way of thinking about it, but if you don't set goals for your data, it's really hard for you to hit those goals, right? To achieve them, even come close. Failing to set clear expectations for your data opens you up to risk as well. I think we've been hearing about that since yesterday. Things like performance and security. So back to the experts. Their recommendation was to establish a data governance office focused on data quality and issues management. That's when I joined Western Digital. So a short time after I joined, my newly established team and I made a trip to Southeast Asia. This is where our factories are, and we wanted to get as close to the point of data creation as possible. This is where the manufacturing data is started. This is where it's born, is in the factories in Malaysia and Thailand. So we all got together and we identified stakeholders, and we had everybody list out their issues before we got there, and we pulled everyone into a room, and we prioritized, and we started doing root cause analysis with people. And it was amazing to see how everybody was interested in solving these problems, and they were all eager. So we did this work. We traveled to several locations. The one thing we discovered early on is that our engineers, this was our big surprise, the engineers that we were working with, they apply quality to product every day. They just weren't applying the same principles to data. They hadn't made that connection. It's kind of like the dishwasher. Soap is soap is soap. They hadn't made that connection. They weren't applying the same principles for quality to their data. So it was an eye-opener for them as well. Let me ask you, do you think we had made assumptions about our engineers? Because they're brilliant, right? Just like Josh, they're brilliant. So perhaps we had made some assumptions about what they knew about applying quality principles to their data. Well, so at one location, a guy stood up. He was a big guy, and he was kind of pissed off. He was not happy. He said, "I can't believe this. I've known about this problem for 8 years." We were discussing a problem he had known about for 8 years. He said, "Right here in this room, in this moment, we already have a probable cause identified and somebody offering to fix it. We've had this problem for 8 years. Nobody's ever pulled us all together in one room to talk about this problem. We just assumed, we just accepted that the data was corrupt." Can you imagine? We're just going to accept it. That's not okay. Do you think it's happening in your organizations? I've seen some heads nodding out here. I think it is. Yeah, I'm just saying. It very, very likely is, yeah. So this trip lasted 3 weeks, and we traveled, as I mentioned, Malaysia and Thailand, met with multiple teams, and the engineers, by the time we left, they were all data stewards or data domain owners. We had people who could make decisions on the data. They also knew how to identify the critical stakeholders and how to conduct the root cause analysis themselves. We gave them a place to record their issues with data, and we assigned responsibilities and ownership to them for managing those issues. And then, of course, we stood by remotely, but we have people in Asia as well on the team, on the data governance team, to help hold their hand and guide them if they need help getting work done. So we managed all of that. By the time we left, we had established clear expectations for how to manage data quality. tying this back to the dishwasher story, they knew which soap was appropriate for their task. Okay? So a couple weeks ago, I had one of the business managers I had worked with at that time call me from Malaysia. And while we were talking, he said to me, you know, since you arrived, we all know where we're going. We're all working together. I couldn't believe what I was hearing from him. He goes, you know, we're all moving in the same direction. Wow. I didn't expect to have that kind of an impact on them. We just went over there to help them with their data problems, right? So why did we have an impact on them? I'll tell you, we have a very strong charter and vision statement that we created in 2014, and it's still as relevant today as it was then. Do you have charters and vision statements? Have you forgotten about them? Were they written years ago and just put in a repository somewhere? I rely on them every time we have a change, a new business mandate. I rely on them. Every year when we set goals for the next year, I rely on them. And I use them with my team. We work together to lay out the roadmap for what we're going to achieve. You don't just jump blindly into the car, right, and head across country. You all get a say. But you still have to have a leader to make sure that everybody knows where you're going and why. We listened to Jocko talk about leadership yesterday, and it was profound, the parallels I saw in what we've been doing, making sure that everybody understood their role and why they're doing what they're doing. It's very important. We have a why statement, and we refer to it all the time. It's very important. I really believe that these two things that I mentioned, your charter and your vision statement, they're foundational to help you achieve your success. Keeping your team together and wanting to do what they do. It's much easier when you all know why you're going in the direction you're going and where you're going. So, as we mentioned, in 2016, we began integrating the three very, very large companies, Western Digital, Hitachi, Global Storage, and SanDisk. Very, very large companies all coming together. In 2016, we started this work. And as Junan said, the scope for data quality was changing. We were no longer worried about data quality for the manufacturing organization. Now we had to do data quality across multiple organizations and in alignment with major initiatives. At the same time, something else you've been hearing about, GDPR, was on the table. The European Union said, okay, you know what, in 2018, you guys better have everything ready to go and be in compliance with the General Data Protection Regulation. So that we had that challenge also. And the legal team was wondering, how can the data governance organization help ready us for compliance to this regulation? Now, not only did we have to start worrying about data quality issues for each of these new organizations, but these data quality issues could hamper the integration efforts. So we had to prioritize and really work closely with everybody to understand why things were prioritized the way they were and keep things moving, get those issues addressed on the integration front. We also needed to build in long-term data stewardship and data quality practices to make sure that we kept managing that as we continued our integration. So the first 2 years that we were focusing on data governance and data quality, the foundation had already been set. Then we got ready to do this integration. We had a very solid team. We had a very solid foundation. So our biggest challenge we were facing was where to begin. Where do we start? So we decided that the best place and the most obvious choice was to align with the strategic initiatives deemed critical to the integration of these three companies. And we started working very closely with those teams. We're talking about master data management, ERP, integrated reporting, and compliance. It's a lot when you think about this little team that had just been focusing on one organization. What did we do? We revisited the charter and the vision statement, and we laid out a new roadmap. That also, from my perspective, is a very obvious thing we needed to do. So we did that, and then off we went. Like many organizations, my family has realized the value of having a data governance officer in the home. True story. I'm the go-to data steward for all data, DMV, tax data, any of our medical, our insurance, all that data, I'm the go-to data steward for it. I also created a glossary of terms so that I could help my husband understand these cryptic text messages from my son. How many of you knew what FOMO was before yesterday? Couple. True story. Quite often he texts me and says, "What is he saying? What is he saying?" He doesn't have any idea. But I've also implemented change control, and this is very important because I need to know in advance when my husband is thinking about buying another motorcycle. We already have 5. It's really important to me to know in advance if we're going to do this. So in recent years, I've also taken on the responsibility for all master data. You're thinking, what? Master? Our contact list. Doctors, dentists, family, friends, accountants, they're all in there. I'm the one that maintains that. Oh, I'm also a walking metadata repository. Yeah, it's true. I think some of you are in the room here walking metadata repositories too. I'm going to tell you how you can identify yourself as one. My husband and my son rely on me to answer some very important questions. Like, is this milk still good? How about this one? Are these dishes clean? My husband will even stand in front of the pantry with both doors open. Do we have any chips? Now, I know it's humorous and you get the point, right? You shouldn't have to go hunt down your data. You shouldn't have to ask anybody, do we have any? Is it any good? When was the last time we used this? So the good news is, advances in metadata management technology have unlocked the door for organizations to better understand their data. All these questions that I've just asked, it's so much easier to answer those questions when you have a metadata management system. It helps you understand your data, where it came from, who's using it, where it's been, whether or not anybody's using it anymore. Organizations are now recognizing that good metadata is a key requirement for minimizing the risk of data breaches. It's also very important to help you comply with GDPR. So it's not hard to see why metadata is so important when dealing with the expanse of data being created by things like the Internet of Things. You heard for the last 24 hours about how much data we're collecting now. It's incredible. AI, machine learning, these all generate a lot of data, and in order to manage that data, you've got to manage the metadata that they rely on to be successful. We heard about edge computing. Let's talk about edge computing. Edge computing alone, it ingests data, it stores it, it filters it before sending it onto the cloud. Try doing this without labels and descriptions. Proper data governance with a focus on metadata management and data quality requires changes to culture. It also requires changes to new processes and tools, and it requires champions to keep it going, and I can't underscore that enough. You've got to have champions in the organization willing to drive this forward and push it, people that believe in what you're doing. So last summer, it was becoming imperative that we rethink how we were managing these volumes of data, all this leading edge stuff that you're hearing about, in addition to integrating these companies. We've got future stuff as well as what we need to achieve today to keep things going, to keep the lights on, right? Well, we knew that we had a heavy demand to really understand this data coming at us from all different directions. We also knew we couldn't fully achieve this understanding without establishing a metadata management framework. We hadn't gone down that path yet. But we knew we couldn't do it by ourselves. We knew that the metadata management framework was not going to save us unless we integrated it with data governance and stewardship and data quality. All those things had to come together. So recognizing that we lack the resources and the expertise to both quickly and properly define a comprehensive program that encompassed the people, process, and technology aspects of a global program, we brought in Trace3 to help us with that. So we had very specific requirements for metadata management, for the framework, and we needed somewhere to store the metadata. We needed to be able to search it. So we had specific requirements, and we really needed a way that we could put a business glossary in front of our business, our data stewards, and have them manage it. It had to be very user-friendly. We knew we had rules and taxonomies that we wanted all these things brought together, and we needed to be able to manage it with data governance tools. That was the bottom line. So the end result of that engagement was that both our technology and our business requirements could be met. We also laid out an implementation plan, and we planned the alignment with the strategic programs along with that implementation plan. The engagement delivered a very clear strategy for global information governance. That's bringing all these components together in something called global information governance. It laid the foundation for the data governance technology, and it delivered the framework we were looking for. Metadata can finally be liberated now from the project repository. I'm assuming many of you know what I'm talking about when I say the project repository. It's where we capture all the metadata and all the business rules and definitions during the project, and then we store it online somewhere in a Word document or Excel. And the project finishes and nobody uses it again. And then down the road we have another project and we hire more consultants to come in and gather that same information, right? There's a way of freeing that metadata so you don't have to pay for that multiple times. So it was my goal to share with you maybe some fun lessons about understanding what clear expectations look like, about establishing a solid foundation. I talk about we established a solid foundation in our first 2 years in the organization. We had data governance, stewards, we had data quality practices. All of that was in place, very important to help us scale when the opportunity presented itself. Now, whether or not you're doing data governance in your organization, I challenge you to think about these things because they do affect you, and I think that metadata management also affects you. If you're not doing it, I think you want to take a closer look at it. So I'll leave you with this. The author, Simon Sinek, said the goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. I believe governing data is an organizational responsibility. I also believe that we have the power to transform business through sound data governance practices. Do you believe what I believe? Thank you very much, everybody.